Chicago.
We just showed you that piece. We're taking a closer look at the weapons ISIS militants are using in Iraq and where exactly they came from. According to a senior Kurdish official, the militant fighters have U.S.-made weapons seized during fighting with the Iraqi army, even using some American tanks. So let's talk about that with CNN terrorism analyst Paul Cruikshank and retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. He is a former commanding general for Europe and the 7th Army. General, first to you, as we talk about the fact that these ISIS militants are using some of the U.S. weaponry. I understand that some of it, though, is so sophisticated, they wouldn't know how to use it.
Well, some of them, that's probably true, Brooke, but also you have to understand that a lot of the weapons we gave them, to include the M1 tank, is an export version. So it doesn't have some of the same things that a U.S. version would have. And it is extremely sophisticated. The firing sequence for a trained tanker, I happen to be a tanker, is pretty difficult. If you know how to use it and you've been trained in it, you can hit anything you point at. But it's very difficult to be trained on it.
But bottom line, General, as far as the weapons go, and then I want to move on to you, Paul, man for man, whether you are part of the Peshmerga Kurdish military or Iraqi Air Force, let's say, who has the bigger guns?
Well, I think the U.S. export tanks is certainly an imposing piece of kit. But at the same time, as we saw yesterday, and you continue to show on the air, it also makes a pretty good target for pilots. So that's a whole lot different than going after individual fighters. If they're driving around in a tank or an armored personnel carrier or towing an artillery piece, they're going to become quickly a target.
Paul Cruikshank, to you, and let's just pivot this conversation to what you wrote about in that CNN opinion piece about how there will be unintended consequences of the U.S. airstrike campaign over Iraq, including retaliation from ISIS. How big of a concern? It's one thing to talk about retaliation within Iraq, and then it's another to talk about targets in the West.
It's of big concern, Brooke, and particularly in Europe for European counterterrorism officials. There are up to about 1,000 European fighters that have joined this group. Hundreds of people from Europe have traveled back from Syria to Europe. So there's a real concern that ISIS could lash out with a terrorist attack, train some of these operatives and send them back.
We were talking recently in the news about coming from overseas to the United States. People were having to turn on and off their cell phones and their laptops. Is that at all tied to this?
It could possibly be tied to this, because there is concern that some of the AQAP bomb makers, that's Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Yemen, have transferred some bomb-making know-how in terms of getting bombs onto aeroplanes undetected to jihadist groups in Syria. Obviously, one of those jihadist groups is ISIS. So some concern that they could perhaps at some stage equip a European volunteer or an American volunteer with one of these devices and perhaps target Western aviation, Brooke.
That is frightening. There is so much to this story and so much to talk about. Gentlemen, do me a favor. Stay with me. We're going to hit a quick commercial break. Can you fight ISIS with their airstrikes? This is a nimble force that has conquered territory with lightning speed. Can you fight these militants from the air? We'll talk about that. And about 15 minutes from now, Dr. Sanjay Gupta is up with more on the deadly Ebola outbreak. Sanjay?
Well, Brooke, all week people have been emailing and tweeting me questions about the Ebola outbreak. So we're going to bring you some answers, plus an incredible rare look inside a Gaza emergency room. And finally, the latest on a federal bill that could legalize some strains of marijuana. See you in just a bit, 4:30 Eastern.
When I had my first migraine, I was lucky. That sounds crazy, I know, but my mom got migraines, so she knew this would help. Excedrin migraine starts to relieve my pain in 30 minutes, plus sensitivity to light, sound, even nausea. Excedrin migraine works.
There. Hello. Hot stuff.
Not turning the thermostat down.
That's not what I was doing. I was just having fun. Come here. Nice and tight. Atta girl. There's a sweet spot. Hold on. That didn't happen in practice.
There's a better way. Mitsubishi Electric Systems give you the temperature you want in any room with no ductwork and lower energy bills. Mitsubishi Electric Cooling and Heating. Live better. Go to MitsubishiComfort.com.
trains go, the economy comes to life. Norfolk Southern. One line, infinite possibilities.
The fun is back.
We're barefooting. We're barefooting.
Don't let cracks and splinters spoil your fun. Bear Deck Over gives new life to old wood and concrete. More than a stain, it extends the life of your deck, fills cracks and covers splinters.
We're barefooting.
Don't replace, resurface.
Do the barefoot thing.
With Bear Deck Over, exclusively at the Home Depot. Good, better, Bear.
You've worked hard to get from point A to point B, but you're not done. Capella University can help take your career even further with the most direct path to your point C. Capella University. Start your journey at capella.edu.
Closed captioning brought to you by InventHelp. Call 1-888-909-IDEA.
People ask me all the time, George, what do I do with my idea for a new product? I tell them, call my friends at InventHelp.
Call for free information. Tomorrow night on The Hunt.
He always wanted to do stuff with us kids. That's when he started molesting me.
Rick McLean is out there trying to convince you to let him have your children.
The Hunt with John Walsh. Tomorrow night at 9 on CNN.
I'm Alex Trebek. If you're age 50 to 85, please listen carefully. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock through the Colonial Penn program. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options for just $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life, and coverage can never be canceled. Your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and gift. Both are free, with no obligation.
Call 1-800-808-1800. 1-800-808-1800. Call now.
The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, Monday at 5 Eastern on CNN.
You are watching CNN. I'm Brooke Baldwin. As we continue our coverage on Iraq, airstrikes, U.S. airstrikes have ramped up against America's involvement in Iraq, where ISIS calls itself the Islamic State. And these militants are seizing control of towns and key infrastructure in an advance that has forced hundreds of thousands of families to run for their lives. Back with me, CNN terrorism analyst Paul Cruikshank and retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. General, let me just begin with you, because much ado has been made about this hydroelectric dam on the Tigris River in Mosul, the second largest city. Do you fear that, as far as retaliation, possible retaliation from ISIS goes, that is something they could use as far as flooding and potentially killing many people, or that it's something that they want to hang on to because they plan on making an Islamic State and that's what runs the power?
Right. I say the second one, Brooke, and thanks for asking about that, because I think there's a lot of fear about this. That dam certainly is crumbling. It's been that way. Well, when we were there, we had some engineers take a look at it, and it had certainly not been well maintained, so there is that danger. But truthfully, I think ISIS wants to control it because it controls hydroelectricity for not only Mosul, but all the smaller towns in Nineveh province, but it also controls much of the electricity going to Erbil and some of the Kurdish regions as well. Secondly, if they do unleash some of the water from the gates, it's going to flood the areas and the towns that they like to occupy. So I've heard discussions about it going all the way down past Baghdad. I don't think that's the case, especially this time of year. The dam is probably only at about 40% water supply, and it couldn't be just wide open where gushes of water are going to come out. Thirdly, I just don't think they want they want to build a state, so they want as much infrastructure as they can. And Rick Francona said earlier, they've now looked at taking over the Haditha Dam as well, which is the second of 3 dams in that area. So it's obvious to me they're trying to establish the power source for a state, and they're looking at all the infrastructure requirements to do that.
I'm glad you bring that up, because there has been a lot of fear that they could use that, or even use it perhaps as a negotiating tactic. But talking to Colonel Francona, he said, negotiate? These people don't negotiate.
Right.
Paul, to you on your point, just in what you wrote about possible retaliation from ISIS, your first point on how they could retaliate. ISIS could unleash a crash program to attack the West. What do you mean by a crash program?
Well, what that would entail is giving Western recruits specifically tailored training in terms of bomb making, to make the kind of bombs where you can actually go to a home improvement store in the West or a beauty supply store and actually make an explosive device. We saw Al-Qaeda in Pakistan give that sort of training, specifically tailored training to Western recruits in the 2000s, in the period after 9/11. We have not yet seen that from ISIS. So they could launch this kind of program and then send Western operatives back to the West to launch attacks.
I urge our viewers to read your piece, CNN.com/opinion. Paul Cruikshank, thank you. General Hertling, thank you as well. The NCAA has fought the idea of paying college athletes, but a new lawsuit could totally change the way colleges